Welcome to the Perspective Podcast. Josue here. As you guys probably already know, I'm a fellow believer from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I attended the Oral Roberts University, and I presently live in this great nation of Texas, as the people call it. To my left, we have Mr. Chase Brown, who was also born in Texas. He attended the University of North Texas. He's an aspiring philanthropic creative, and it is August 23rd, and he still loves very long walks on the beach. Why that is, I'm not sure. Chase Brown, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. It was a solid Monday. Work was productive. Stuff around the house was productive. And, nothing else really needs to be said.
Yeah.
How are you, man?
I'm good. Work was productive. Stuck around the house. I could hear the people outside working.
You got some Old West, though? Yeah.
I did. I got to finish that mug, too. I could hear the people working outside. It's always nice when they play their music, and then I can just jam out with them. But enough about me. As you guys already know, during these times, we try to bring you guys special guests. And today, we really had to reach far to bring on our guest for today.
Very much so.
A very busy man. He's a very popular man. He's a very sought after man. Is that how you say?
That's good.
English isn't my first language, so you guys will have to forgive me. He's a 5-time North Texas Business Owner of the Year, 4-time Uganda's favorite traveler, 3-time Outreach champion of Fort Worth, and a man filled with boldness and love. And he has one of the craziest chains you will see in 2021. We have Mr. Raul Garcia himself in the building. How you doing, sir?
That was an incredible introduction.
Yeah.
I don't think I even have been labeled that many things and with that kind of adjectives associated with them. I may need to actually copy and paste that for later. I think that's a heck of a Instagram bio right there.
I'll send it to you, man.
Yeah.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I think I'm doing better after that introduction, actually.
Of course,
I think if you have a crappy Monday, let's just call Josue. He may
put
just
you in the right spirits, right?
He may just puff up your Monday real fast.
That's what we do
need
here,
any
man.
quotes for anything if you have Josue next to you.
That's what we do here, man. Before we even get started, talk to me about your necklace here, because I have one similar. I feel like I know what it is, but I kind of want to hear about that.
It actually drives up a lot of conversations. It's, if I could see it, it would be even better. But I'm glad you can see it, Josue. So one is a scroll, and then the other one is actually dirt from the Sea of Galilee. There is a mustard seed actually dug into that little, just for people that are listening, not watching. It's essentially a little capsule, glass capsule that has a scroll. If you can visualize that inside of it, it's very small, about an inch long. And then on the other one, there's a little bit, about an ounce of dirt from the Sea of Galilee. And right in the scroll, there's actually the verse that talks about the faith of a mustard seed. So they kind of go hand in hand. But the amazing part about it is people imagine up a ton of things that they think I have around my neck, and I guess because I'm Colombian, they assume the worst. But yeah,
I was gonna say something, but
we'll leave it to the side. We'll leave it unsaid. Yeah. But yeah, man, appreciate you making the time to come on. Obviously, multi-time returning guests and stuff like that.
Wow,
so always love spending the time with you, man. But yeah, you were able to go to Uganda a few months ago. Talk to us about that, man.
Yeah, so this is the second time around. We went back in 2018. When I say we, I go with a group that I am blessed and fortunate enough to be on the board of. They're called Go Overflow. A couple and good friends of mine started it, Steve and Kristen. And through walking with them and being in relationship with them, they had invited me several times prior to 2018, and then finally the Lord kind of confirmed through a very miraculous way, which I can share maybe on here how it all came about. But yeah, this is the second time around. We were definitely planning on doing it in 2019, but obviously I don't need to speak to why we didn't go on 2019 as the world shut down and everything else that happened throughout that year. It didn't allow us to go, so we had to essentially visit with a lot of the people that we partner with and the people that we go and reach and minister to via Zoom and via every other thing that we didn't even know existed technologically wise to reach out to these communities and reach out to these people in the country of Uganda. That many people think Africa is a country, and it is not.
Crazy, right?
It is a continent. So yeah, we went to Uganda, and it was definitely incredible. Definitely very different than the first time we went, but definitely a must for me to do and for me to go this year, and definitely we'll be going back for sure.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned potentially sharing this miraculous way that all of that kind of came together. I mean, we would love to hear that. So if you kind of get into that.
Sure. So in my background, and Chase, and I think you've heard this, Josue, in the back. I didn't come to my walk with Christ to the traditional church service or upbringing of a family Christian background, but I actually came in, kicking and screaming. Actually, I was an atheist, or at least self-pronounced atheist. I would say pretty educated, although that may sound arrogant enough to, considering I'm only 25, but I was pretty fascinated with the fact of debunking religions, because I was so essentially fascinated with people that had such convictions, yet they had such surface level understanding of what they decided to, advocate for, yet they didn't even know what their whole belief system was set on, from Christianity all the way down to religions some people haven't even heard of. And so all that being said, to not go down a rabbit trail, which I'm really good at, by the way, I'm asking you guys to help me out with that. When I was invited to go to Africa a few years back in 2017, the first time, and the Lord didn't give me peace about it. On 2018, I was actually going through a buyout with my company, I would say actually with my partner through our company that we both owned at the time, and obviously funds were strained because of the situation and attorneys and all of that goes with it. If anybody is listening that has a business, the moment you speak about a buyout, very seldomly it's a peaceful process, because it's usually someone wanting to essentially go a different direction, or someone essentially saying, I don't want to be in this anymore, and the company's not in a position to just buy someone out. So regardless, it's usually a emotionally charged time, and I'm going to withhold the word season. So
Trying to throw it out too much.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that being said, funds were tight. That was somewhat for me like an instant I don't think the Lord wants me to do this, not because I've asked him or because I've prayed about it, but just instantly, circumstantially. Many times we think that because things circumstantially don't line up, it must be the Lord telling me no, which really, it actually drives you to really disregard what his will is in the whole process. So that's one variable in that time. Then there's the factor that this buyout is, the person does not want to let go of the company, and I'm being confirmed that I need to part ways with this person. So all of that's happening, and it's also a family member, so a lot of emotions going on in the family, and funds are tight, and et cetera. And then all of a sudden, my buddy calls me and says, hey, I have a word, and I really believe you got to be on this trip. And I'm like, oh, well, I have a different word, and it's not the one you're speaking. And he just kind of told me, well, I'm just encouraging you to pray about it, seek the Lord about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. And as I actually did, the next morning, the Lord actually put it on my heart, because we were actually coming up on the beginning of the year, which I usually do a first of the year fast. The trip wasn't until July, but I was already kind of, because they'd asked me the year before, and they kept asking. And as I approached the first of the year fast, the Lord revealed to me that I wasn't just going to go on one trip. I was going to go on multiple trips, including Israel, which is where I actually got those capsules that I was just talking about. And he's laying this out in my journal. He's laying it out in dreams. He's laying it out in words. And I'm like, circumstantially, this just isn't working, because this buyout took months to even came to a close. So that's all happening. And as starts to approach April, May, I can't tell you, I remember the exact month, but Steve calls me and says, hey, I need to know in regards to, are you coming or not? You're on the board. We'd love for you to be there, but we need to know, because we got to buy the tickets and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you know what? Let me just take one more night to really figure out how this is going to happen, because I know he said I'm going, but I don't know how this is going to happen, because I don't have the money, and I'm not the fundraising kind of guy. I don't, not because I can't ask. I didn't have peace about it. So I don't know what he wants me to do. So I pray about it. I don't get jacked that morning. and I'm on my way to Louisiana for work for a business trip, and all of a sudden, as I'm traveling to Louisiana, I get a message on Facebook, and it's a guy that I literally used to serve in a restaurant when I was serving tables part-time while I was trying to get my little business off the ground. And he'd come in every Friday with his kids from football, and he'd pray for me, he'd encourage me, and I would stiff arm that the whole way through. Please don't do that. I'm not interested. I am not that guy. Don't do that with me. But he'd come in every Friday, and he didn't lead me to Christ, but he definitely planted seeds enough to... one day he prayed for me. He said, well, let me just add you on Facebook. I'd love to see what the Lord does. And I didn't take much weight to it, but I added him on Facebook. He tipped me well, let's just say the least.
That's always nice. Yeah.
So he kept being my friend. And like many of us, I'm sure listening, we have a lot of people on Facebook that we have no clue are watching, reading, and even following us on Facebook.
Yeah.
And
how'd they get at it? I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. And so he messages me out of the blue. I click on his picture because I'm like, who's this cat that just messaged me? And I see his face. I'm like, wait, I think I remember that guy. And so he messages, hey, can I call you? And I'm like, I haven't talked to this guy in years. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. So I give him my number, and he calls me, and he's like, hey, I don't know why, but I just felt led to call you and pray for you. What's going on? And my wife's been praying about just things that we're doing as a family, and you kept coming up. And he's being very generic. But I'm like, and the trip comes up to my mind. Like, well, you can pray about these trips, right? I'm supposed to go to Israel, and he put it on my heart that I'm supposed to go to Africa, and I'm supposed to go on this other trip. And he said, oh, okay, well, it sounds like you're going to go then. And I'm like, oh, well, that sounds really cute, but I don't have the money. And he says, well, yeah, but if the Lord said it, then it's going to happen. I'm like, oh, okay, I got it. I get it. That's Hebrews 11:1. He starts to quote, and I'm like, I have faith, and I get the aspect of trust in the Lord. But in the midst of that circumstance, the manifestation of that hasn't happened. So it's rubbing, and I'm like, look, why don't you just pray for me? And frustrating, I'm like, let's just wrap up this conversation. And so he says, okay, well, let me pray for you. And then after he prays for me, he's like, well, let me get your info. And so he gets my email, and he gets this and that and the other. Well, the next day, I get a confirmation through Zelle that he wired me literally over 10 grand.
Wow.
And I'm not doing that because it's an amount of money or anything to boast about it, but it literally happened. And I call him almost in tears, and I'm like, dude, what? Like, the only reason I know this is because you're the only person I spoke to. And he tried to keep it anonymous, which was kind of like, okay. But he just told me, and he said this to me, and it sunk deep. And he said, me and my wife have been praying. Our business is doing really well. And we believe that the most fertile soil that he's calling us to sow into is you. We've been watching your walk for years now through Facebook, which really opened my eyes to how much people are watching and seeing and reading. And we think that the people are liking and commenting and maybe even are active on Facebook are the people that are genuinely. But if you have thousands of people, there are thousands of people reading your post. You really don't think that.
Yeah.
But they are. And this was one individual that I didn't even know was even in my radar, let alone that the Lord was working in. And so he says that to me, it sunk deep, and I didn't even know how to respond. And he says, so just go do what the Lord told you to do and stop letting this burden take away from what you're called and obedient to be doing on these trips. So he pays for my Israel trip, and he pays for my Africa trip. Well, that in itself was the aspect of how this all started. And even leading up to the trip itself, from how the buyout wrapped up and everything, it was just insane, which I could be here for a long time, but that's really how it just started. And then from there, 2 times over into Uganda now, the Lord has just confirmed it, and it's just made it very, very apparent. So for anybody that's listening that believes that the Lord can't provide, I'm as cynical as it gets. And I'm not saying skeptical. I'm saying I'm wired to be cynical. The Lord had to drive faith into me in ways like how I just described to remind me that he's not just Jehovah Jireh, but he is sovereign over every single situation. So that's just one example of that.
Josue about to bust out here in song.
Yeah, I was about to, and then somebody was gonna. No, I mean, I think that's such a great point that's easily we don't easily think about. It reminded me of a short story I'm gonna share real quick. I had I was trying to do my YouTube stuff, and I remember one time I made a post about it, and I didn't really see the numbers like I wanted to see, you know. And I was like, dang, like how come I didn't get a number? I was down a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna hold you guys. But I remember the Lord kind of just at that moment that better is the beginning of a thing than the end, or is it the end of a thing than the beginning? Sorry. I remember that verse, and I was like, okay, you know, it kind of brings a little comfort to you, to your heart. I get on Instagram, I get 2 messages from people that I was not even expecting, friends from high school that I never thought would watch any of the things that I was posting back to back. One of them was like, bro, you know, I just want to, this is completely random, but I just want to say I've been watching everything. I'm like, what do you mean you've been watching? You know, and to your point, I think it's easy for us to, because you might not see that person liking or commenting or whatever, but you miss on the point that if you have thousands of people on, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, whatever the situation might be, they are watching.
Yep.
They are reading these posts, and they might not be commenting. So I think that's a great reminder for all of us. And but yeah, that's an incredible story. You know how God was able to orchestrate everything. And so the first time in 2018 is when you went to Uganda.
Yes.
How long were you there? And can you tell us a little bit of what time in Uganda was in terms of what exactly you guys were doing? Because some people are like, what in the world is a mission trip? You know, what does that look like?
Sure. So, so the first trip, and I'm going to try to wrap up so I can lead into the second one quickly. The first trip was obviously, for me, the first time I was going to Africa in itself. I traveled, but I hadn't really traveled internationally all that much. I mean, I'm originally Colombian, so moving from Colombia to the U.S. was probably the most exciting airplane ride I've had. And since then, I've traveled a little bit nationally,
Just
but
wondering,
very, very few.
what were you wearing on that flight by chance? Do you remember?
A U.S. hat.
On my way from
Colombia
to here?
Just wondering.
Oof,
Do
I
you know
love
if it was just like a
bald eagle
t-shirt
shirt.
and shorts? Like
It was actually,
it was like a jacket?
I think I was 6 years old, dude. I was probably wearing a t-shirt. I think I was wearing a Winnie the Pooh t-shirt and
There we go.
jeans. And I was wearing my Charlie Brown hat. Yep. Yep. Yep.
So whenever Josh, you could tell.
Yeah, I was looking like the Michelin Man. We came in with these big old coats like this. It was January 2002. I was like, what is the cold? What is the cold? I don't know. We've never experienced the cold. So we came in with these huge jackets. Like you could barely even put your hands down. So
And then he lands in, was it Georgia or Texas?
Georgia.
Yeah, then he lands in
Georgia.
Atlanta.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't New
Yeah.
York
Then
cold.
you realize what beach shorts really were created for.
Yeah.
But no, you can continue.
But yeah, so that was the most exciting traveling I had done, and now I'm 20 something years old, right? So it's like it's been a period of time since I've really traveled, really outside of the country, and they're inviting me. Well, let's go do this. And the year prior, I actually had gone to Belize. Most people think it's a vacationing spot. Well, there's a ton of slums out there, just like Mexico. It's not just Cancun, Playa del Carmen. There is a ton of poverty and there's a ton of need. Many people just think of Africa and India and these places that are becoming Instagram quotes for, well, you've never been to Africa. Well, there's other places around the globe that are essentially overlooked. But that being said, Belize was somewhere where I left, but that was kind of a beginner's trip that I'd done with the same organization. And leading up to Africa, I was trying to prepare mentally for it because first it's a 15 and a half hour plane ride, and then it's another 4 hours depending on where the plane lands, because you can literally land on Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Europe. I mean, you can land all sorts of places depending on what airline you go with. So I'm preparing for that because never done that before. And leading up to that trip, literally as I got on the plane, the Lord had postured my heart right about 48 hours before. I was on my way home from work, and I'm in my car. I'm extremely frustrated, rush hour. I'm sure people here don't know what that feels like, but traffic is not moving, and there's a point to my story, by the way. And as I'm sitting on 35, I don't know why, but I had not an ounce of patience. And I started looking at the frontage road. If you guys have ever been on a highway, and you start looking at the car that's not moving in front of you, and I'm looking at the frontage, looking at the, and I'm like, I'm gonna go for it.
Yep.
And keep in mind, I'm driving a sedan. I am not driving a truck. I am not driving a sedan that even has an ounce of suspension. But for some reason, I think that this beautiful grass is just gonna, smooth, just sail me into the frontage road, and I'm gonna get home much faster. Well, the moment I get on the grass, I didn't know this, but the grass was actually really long. It was actually an instant drop. Well, I just floor it to think I'm gonna make it. Next thing you know, as I floor it, I go over a bump. The car ends up like a seesaw, and now I'm sitting in a four-door sedan seesawing in the middle of a grass between frontage and highway, thinking a cop's gonna see me. I have no excuse, like really, like you can't even lie your way out of that, even if you tried. And all of a sudden, I start panicking. So I'm like accelerating, getting out of the car, trying to push it, get on the car again, floor it. And next thing you know, the car ain't moving, and I'm tripping out. And then next thing you know, I see smoke coming from the right side of my car. I see a truck on the frontage side of the road because I'm obviously facing that way. And this truck literally stops and says fire, and I'm like, fire? What are you talking about? And I see this smoke coming out the right side, and all of a sudden, I look in my rearview mirror, and I got flames coming out the back of my car.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like thinking, I'm about to die.
Yeah.
48 hours later, I'm supposed to get on a plane to go to Africa. And all of a sudden, within seconds, there's flames surrounding the entire car. And I'm like, Lord, if this is my time, I guess this is my time. I'm not kidding. And I open my door to see if I can get out because there's smoke in every direction. I can barely look out any direction. I take off my shirt to hopefully put the fire down so I can at least get out of the car. Then I'm thinking, I can't just leave this car. I got to put this fire out. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Well, as I'm getting out of the car, and I put the T-shirt on the floor. Next thing you know, I got 7 people from 7 different directions. I got 3 semis that stopped, a Prius, a minivan with a mom and her 3-year-old with a bottle of water, and they all come out of nowhere with fire extinguishers. Why a Prius had a fire extinguisher is beyond my mind. Why a mom in a minivan? Like, I got the semis. They're supposed to have one. And they fire extinguished. I looked like a Christmas tree. And there was 7. Which we all biblically know that there's a significance behind that number. And next thing you know, the fire is out. They're like, okay, we'll go home. And I'm like, go home? What do you mean this car's going to explode? Like, I still don't even know what caused the fire. And they're like, well, they hitch my car. They haul me out of the little ditch I was stuck on. And next thing you know, I'm like, I can't just go home. Like, something just happened. Like, not one cop showed up. I mean, there's smoke everywhere, nothing. And it was like, legitimately speaking, the Lord was ministering to me right there in that moment. Like, I could get you that close into the fire and have it not touch you. And all of a sudden I get home, I smell like literally like a cigarette box. And the car is untouched. The mechanic that lives next to me checks the car out. The only thing that was burnt and smoked, the only evidence that the car even had smoke and a fire was the fact that it smelled disgusting. And then the fact that the gas tank had a rubber piece that had melted off. And he literally told me, if the fire would have continued, the only thing that would have essentially protected you is this piece that fell off. And it's like the Lord just left his signature right there. And that night, as I meditated and I just spent time with him, he spoke to me and he says, when you're impatient and you step out of my will, I can protect you. But where I'm taking you in 48 hours, if you do this again, the repercussions are going to be much worse. And that sunk real deep. I got on that plane ride. There was Muslims everywhere. We were flying on Emirates. I got up at 2 a.m. I had a whole bunch of flight attendants in the back, and the Lord put on my heart to ask for, this and that. Next thing you know, they're asking me why I'm on the plane. I'm telling them I'm going on a mission trip. You're not supposed to say that. But I said it. I was a newbie, so I said it anyways. And like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I figured everybody would know what that means. And I got several Muslims as flight attendants, and I got a few atheists, and I got one girl that said, well, I'm a Catholic. I think I know what you're talking about. And next thing you know, I got these 8 or 9 flight attendants, all women in the back, just sitting. And I just decided to bunk down and sit down, and they're asking me all these questions about my faith. 8 hours later, after sharing my journey, apologetic journey of how I came to follow Christ, I'm leading these 8 flight attendants to the Lord. And the one that was an atheist looked at me and said, you know what? I'm not going to make whatever decision they just made, but I got some serious things to think about. And the trip started there. The trip didn't start even when we landed in Africa. And the rest of that trip was just like that, from slums to halfway houses to brothels to all sorts of situations. And then leading up to the reason I went back, we're in a brothel and we're doing a medical mission, doing sonograms for women. I'm kind of in protective mode because if anybody's ever been to a slum, and if you haven't, it's essentially a place that smells like death. It's full of smoke. Most people that are living in that situation make homeless people in the U.S., make them look like they're living in mansions. There's bodies piled up on top of each other, not necessarily dead, but high or completely unconscious because they're deprived or malnourished or lack of food or starved. And it's just literally just hundreds of thousands of square miles of just homes built out of sheet metal and just cracks and crevices of sewage because there's no sewage system. And you're going through these, and there's a brothel right smack in the middle of it. So there's brothels in the U.S. and there's brothels sitting in the middle of a slum, which is just made up out of nothing, really. Cans, mud, and they make these rooms for men to go in there and essentially do the thing with women that don't have money. Therefore, they sell themselves for, not kidding, 25 cents to maybe 15 cents for whatever the man wants to do. Sometimes they pay him, sometimes they don't. So we're going into this room, into this place to do a medical mission because all these women are pregnant. And we're doing sonograms. So I'm more in protective mode. I'm not in evangelist mode. And a lot of the nurses are women, so I'm kind of making sure that the surroundings are good. And as we're doing the medical mission, this little girl sits on my lap. Her name's Nakato. And she's Muslim, and she's noticing that we're doing all these medical things. And she said, what are you doing? And I'm telling her about Jesus. And I'm telling her, and she's like, oh, Allah. And I'm like, no, let me tell you about Jesus. And so I'm ministering to her and telling her about my faith. And she's watching as we're praying for people, and people are getting healed. And she's like, well, I want Jesus. Like, Allah doesn't do this. And it was like that. It just made sense. And I can go into what I mean by that. But essentially that little girl, as 4 hours later we were done, the Lord sunk into me that I was going to sponsor her. And I had heard of child sponsorship, but the Lord just told me I'm going to sponsor her. I didn't even know what sponsorship meant at that moment in that capacity. So I made that decision, and I went to the leader of the ministry afterwards, and I told her. And when we were wrapping up, we got up, and I grabbed the little girl's hand as we were leaving the brothel. Mom comes out of the room, this woman, half naked. She has a baby in her arm. Don't know what she was doing in that room. I'm going to let your imaginations roll, not because you should, but just because you understand where I was. And she sees me, white guy, taking little girl, black little African girl, out of the brothel, where she thinks I'm taking her out of the slum. Like, she thinks I'm taking her to America. We were really just taking her to figure out paperwork. Where does she live? Who's her mom? Who's her family? Well, this mom runs up to me, grabs her newborn, and just sticks it in my chest. I have no hands because these two little girls are hanging on to me. And she's like, take it. And she keeps saying, Muzungu, Muzungu. And for those of you that don't know what that means, it means just world traveler or white guy, essentially. And she says, take him. And I don't have hands. And then all of a sudden my team's like, come on. They move me along, and this woman grabs the baby and throws it. Literally hits the concrete, bounces off the sheet metal. And I just went into straight shock. And picked up the baby, tried to give it back to mom. My team's like, come on. They grab the baby. And next thing you know, I get taken into a room. And I asked the Lord, like, Lord, why did you allow me? No, why did you allow me? Why did you have me see that? And then he actually asked me what I just said. He says, do you mean, why did I allow you to see that? And then next, he reminds me of sponsorship and what it means, because they had talked about it at the beginning of the trip, but I completely ignored the conversation because I've always thought $40 a month. What is that going to do for a kid? And the Lord shows me my product, my company, being manufactured in our facility, and I'm seeing these kids being dropped into our products. And I can go into all that later, but all of a sudden he gives me this vision for the company becoming a bridge for essentially these kids. And the name of our company is called Best Bodies for Life. And then he tells me the reason the name of that company is called what it is. And he gives me significance for it is because I gave my best, so you give your best. Your body is your temple of the Holy Spirit. And I gave my life, so that's why you give your life for these girls. hence Best Bodies for Life. And I'm kind of sitting here thinking, what? Like, I've owned this company for like over a year now, going through a buyout, and he just spoke significance into the name before I even was a Christian, and I came up with this name. And the rest of that trip was obviously in many different ways life-changing, but that sunk in the deepest. And so after that trip, we ended up sponsoring a few girls, and since then we've worked our way up, and this isn't to boast, but we've worked our way up to almost 20 kids that we sponsor to the company, and I've grown a huge passion for child sponsorship because I understand the implications, the significance, and also the power that there is behind child sponsorship. So long story. Hopefully that answers your question, Josue, and that then led into why I had to go the second time this time.
Yeah. And just for context for everyone listening, that was the trip back in 18 or 19?
Yep, 2018.
Yeah. And so just for context for that. And so it's one thing I want to encourage you, and it's so special that I'm going to use a phrase that you don't really like that much, but still going to use it and add some things to it. But I think it really speaks to just how you try to be like present in the moment, and how it's something where, at least what I think one of the components to that is really submitting the moment to the Lord in terms of just like being in communion and communication with him, so that he is able to speak to you, or the Spirit is able to discern to you the significance of the moment and the meaning behind the moment. And I think that for me, it's something that I really try to do, is either like psychoanalyze, like, why am I feeling this way, like in the moment, like what am I doing, or just like in the moment be like, okay, like this feels, as we were kind of talking about before the podcast, like, okay, well, like for me, this last week felt really significant. Like, why, Lord, why was it this significant? He was able to show me a lot of things just simply because I was able to ask. Whereas I think a lot of people, we just kind of go through life and things just happen to us. And we think living in the moment is like not thinking about what the moment actually means. And we think it's just like genuinely just taking it in and like living and whatnot, where it's just like, nah, like an encouragement to all of us is like, don't let life just like come at you, but actually like submit every single thing to the Lord, and that there's going to be an extra layer that's there that is like spiritual and heavenly, and that it's special, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so then from there, what did y'all do this time around?
Well, this time around, I was also wrestling with going, we're, as a company, we're expanding.
Man, were you a wrestler in high school or something?
Yeah, tell me about it, right? My mind wrestles more than my physical body, but for sure. Yeah, so I'm struggling with the decision, because obviously the team has made it aware to all of us, in obviously in addition to the fact that I'm on the board of the organization, but also the fact that they know the significance of what the last trip was for me. So they're like, you have to come. And I'm like, I don't have to do anything. And I'm fighting them on it, because there's a lot going on, and we all know that feeling. And as I was not saying no, but still trying to figure out how I'm going to do it, but knew if he could make it last time possible, who am I to even argue with him this time? So I really just need confirmation. And I'm like, Lord, you made it apparently absolutely obvious that I was supposed to go last time. So here I am. I'm actually in Amarillo, and I'm in a hotel room for work. And I actually get a call, which is ironic because I was in the East Coast last time, and this time I'm in West Texas. And I get a call from the same guy. And he calls me and he says, hey, man, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm good. How are you? And I literally haven't spoken to the guy in months. And he says, I saw on Facebook that Go Overflow posted that they're going again to Uganda. And I'm like, yeah, they are. And they're like, so are you going? And I'm like, well, and I'm not going to be the assumptuous type of, yeah, are you going to pay for it? Like, no, like I legitimately was like, brother, I don't know. The Lord provided last time, and I'm kind of in a position right now where I don't know if I can really fund that trip right now either. So I'm really praying about it. I believe he does want me to go. I'm just trying to figure out if he wants me to go next time or this time. I'm not sure. And he says, well, I believe you have to go see those kids. I believe you got to go and visit those kids and see those kids because they miss you. And And I'm like, okay, well, I know you spoke last time, so I'm going to pray about it. He's like, no, brother, you're going to go. And if I have to fund your trip again, then I will. And I told him very quickly, I'm like, look, before you say that, let me pray about it, because I don't want to just say yes because you're open to paying for the trip. And so I prayed about it, and I sought mentorship, and I sought a lot of people that surround me, and many of them confirmed the fact that this was a trip I needed to go on. And that's why he's also expanded the business. He's spoken to me about the purpose of why he's growing the business, and it's to grow the impact behind the business, which is predominantly surrounding around the kids and child sponsorship and our mission for it. So I'm like, okay, I got to go on this trip. So I call him and I'm like, look, what's your heart behind this? Like, because I need to know, like, do you want me to erase part of it? It's like, look, I am willing to pay for all of it, but if you want to erase part of it, I'll put a part of the funds in there, and then you pray about if there's anyone that the Lord puts on your heart. And the Lord highlighted a few people, and a few people actually sowed into the trip. And for those of you that have never done mission trips, I always say this, look, even if you have the money, when people get to sow into your trip, they get to be a part of everything that you do out there, right? So everything you do, from witnessing to ministering to encouraging to edifying to building up the body of Christ, every aspect of that trip, from you planting your feet on the soil of another country to you getting on the plane and going back home, they are there with you. Their spirit man is there with you, because the Lord literally says in Scripture that those that sow into the mission get to benefit and actually benefit in heaven the same fruits, and even more so depending on the level of obedience that it took for them to sow those seeds into the trip and the aspect of the mission behind this trip. They get to be a part. They get to be essentially in partnership with you in this trip and the mission behind it. So don't allow pride to essentially withhold someone that genuinely has the heart to sow into something that you're doing, regardless if they have funds to do it or not. And so these other individuals really felt led to do so too. And it actually ended up being where they actually had more funds than I needed, and it actually ended up impacting other people that were praying for funds, and they had gotten a word that it was going to be a way that it was unusual, and little did they know is because there was going to be an overflow, which was ironic because that's the name of the ministry, that it would seep into their trip as well. So that being said, when we went to the trip, from going to Kabale, which is one of the regions in Uganda, to Kampala, where we have schools and orphanages and transitional homes for girls. The biggest two takeaways for me, because the last time was kind of zeroing in how much I was not aware of that was going on in the world, how much essential need there was around the world. When I came back from Africa the last time, if it wasn't because the Lord spoke to me about sponsorship, I would have probably sold everything and just went into straight ministry, which I think a lot of people fall privy to that when they go to those types of countries, because they have such guilt to some extent of like, how dare I come to my ivory tower life when there are people literally living off nothing. And I'm over here just going to go back to my own regular life and pretend like nothing happened. So you're that's heavy on your spirit. And this time it was different. This time, after going back, and I was kind of concerned that was going to happen again, it was actually different. I saw the need. There was a moment where we were visiting one of the parents of the kids that we sponsor, and mom is all talking about the Lord and what he's doing, and we're in a slum. So I'm like, the fact that you have that much conviction and passion about what the Lord's doing, it's just mind-blowing in itself. Like, if I could build a picture, like, they're home, they have 6 kids, mom, dad, a newborn, she's pregnant, and believe it or not, it's not because they just pop out babies. It's because most people that have kids in those countries, 80% of them don't make it. So they usually have multiple kids because of the fact that they already know statistically most of their kids don't even make it to the age of 20 because of either malnourishment, poisoning, water, many different reasons. It's not just because people want to be fruitful and multiply. Some of it is truly cultural survival. But that being said, she's praising God, telling us all about what the Lord is doing, and all in the meantime, they have no food to eat. Like, their kids are outside starving, and they're all thanking God about what God's doing in that village. But dad's off. Dad's somewhere off, and he's just, I don't know what's going on with him. I didn't want to ask. I was with allergies at the moment. There was dust everywhere. And one of the team members asked him, so what's going on with him? And he says, we're 3 months behind in rent. And somebody asks, nobody wanted to ask because we're already bringing food and everything, so how much more can we give at that point? And he says that he's 3 months behind, and each month essentially equates to $15. He's $45 behind, and he's close to being evicted. And we're all like, wait. You're about to get evicted for $45? And he said, yeah. Half the village essentially lives on about $100 a month based on the scraps and the odd jobs that they can get in that community. And we're sitting there thinking, like, I spend more money on dinner, let alone we could pay for their entire annual's worth of rent with one paycheck, really. We could probably pay for the whole village if we all pulled our resources together. And it's simple to go to that place, right? It's easy to say, well, let me be the hero. Let me save this situation. Let me be essentially the light in the darkness. But really, I'm not called to be the provider. God is. Not to say that if God puts it on your heart, you shouldn't be that person. But in that circumstance, we knew that would feed them for 3 months and maybe for 1 year. And then in 1 year, they'd be in the same place again, right? So I kind of retreat. I go off to this mountain hill that kind of oversees the slum. And I'm sitting on this broken down church and looking over the valley, because it's nothing but mountains too. Josue's comment earlier, like the weather is incredible in that country. And I think most of Africa is that way, but I may be completely inaccurate in that statement. But the weather is just amazing. Like it's literally just 70. There's really no winter.
The whole time.
It's dry, but not dry like a desert, but just dry without humidity. It's great breeze. And I'm like, this is amazing. It's paradise. Yet it's not at the same time. And it's not just because it's a matter of perspective, but because truly there is misery and pain and hurt. And we know that paradise does not withhold those things because that is not God's will. So I'm sitting in this ledge of this church, and I'm looking at the top of these mountains, and it's rich. I mean, it's green, dark green. So you know the soil's rich. People know that Africa has more resources than most of the planet combined. And yet there's poverty beyond most of the countries that don't have these resources. And so I'm sitting on this ledge, and I'm praying, and I'm seeking the Lord. And a buddy of mine sits down with me, and I wouldn't say a buddy. He's one of the ones on the trip, but we've had good conversations so far. And he says, what do you think? And I'm like, I really think it's a waste. And he says, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, well, I mean, like you just heard it. Like the guy can't even pay his rent, and it's $15. And he says, well, yeah, but like that's the whole country. And I'm like, I got it. That's my point. Like people here have a work ethic that we don't have in our country. We have people that have a posture before work and essentially before situations that we don't have. This woman's praising God when she generally has every reason to be spiting him. I mean, they have resources naturally, organically, logistically, in so many different fashions. They have resources that most countries wish they had, yet they don't. And yet most of the things that are produced in this country are owned by foreign companies, right? So my business mind starts to kind of kick in, and I'm sitting there and saying, well, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. There has to be a way to leverage and figure out how this country can really go beyond what it's doing, because most ministries go out there and says, well, we're going to help them get chickens, or we're going to help them get dairy cows, and we've been doing that. We're doing that, but then they don't have the money to feed the cow, right? Or they don't have the soil or the sanitation to really keep the chickens without essentially making sure that you're not eating chicken that's completely just filled with diseases, right? So really, you give them the resources, but they don't have the environment or the climate to even sustain those resources we're giving them, right? And on top of that, you can't sell the eggs because you don't have an economy that can even support you selling the eggs for what they're worth, right? Because everyone that you're selling them to are in the same situation you are in, right? So what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. I need to pray about it. So we're on the bus. A few hours later, we're talking to one of the leaders that we partner up with. He's actually, they call him the president, but he's really kind of like the chaplain of the slums for Kampala, which is one of the largest slums in Africa. And he says, so what do you think? Same question again. Second time you're here, what do you think? And I just utter it out. He's like, I don't know. I think it's a waste. And he's like, what? And he's from there, so he's really shocked because he sees how joyful and how much I love coming here. I'm like, I love being here, and the people are amazing. But I explained to him the same thing, the resources, the people, the work ethic. And he says, really? Well, what do you think about the chickens? And I'm like, I got it. But I explained to him, no one can afford it for what it's worth. No one can. And on top of that, economically, not to get into a business talk here, you can't affect the economy without bringing new money in, right? You're just recycling the same money that's here. And unfortunately, there's very little of it. And the money that there is governmentally, and it's extremely corrupt because of the governmental structure that most countries in Africa are under. So what would you do? And I'm like, well, you can lease land. I wouldn't buy it because the government can take it from you. But I would leverage the soil, and I would essentially create an export, because no one wants to do tourism, because unfortunately most people that come here are for ministry. And most ministers don't really have much money. So why don't you create an e-commerce business, leverage social media? You could do the same thing people do in America with e-commerce that you could do here, but leverage the teas that everybody comes here to drink, the coffee that people craves. But instead of it being owned by Asian companies and American companies that buy out land here, have Ugandians own the land, have them operate the warehousing, the agriculture, the production, everything. And so now I had this conviction right then and there after having that conversation of coming back. Like, I was excited to come back. And we're still in the works and the conversations of potentially, and anyone that's listening that even has ideas in regards to this, to go out there and essentially go beyond chicken, eggs, cows, feed them for a day, or even teach them how to feed each other for a month. Because you can use that analogy, I'd rather teach you how to fish. But if you have an environment of people that don't even have the water to fish in, or the fish that they're going to catch are essentially not going to be able to be sold to a market because the market doesn't have the economical structure to support what you're trying to sell after you learn how to fish, then you're still dead in the water, no pun intended. You're essentially in a place where you're essentially on a hamster wheel, right? So if you can go beyond that and you can go into what you call an export business and leverage online, while many people are doing it in the U.S. and many other countries, why not Africa? Why not these countries that have the same access to the same thing called the internet and be able to leverage the things that they have to offer the world instead of have other countries own their own proper land, right? We talk about all sorts of things here in America about division and race and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, like, that country, like, it's still being enslaved by its own people. Because people have no freedom to operate within a free market structure, because every bit of wealth is essentially being operated through a governmental system. They call it a democracy, yet the president's been there for 40 plus years, right? So it's corrupt, so how can you influence that from the outside in instead of going in there and buying up land to make yourself wealthy? Why don't you leverage it to help people out there? So that's kind of what the trip really encompassed for me this time, and really has my my nuts and bolts kind of cranking right now.
Yeah, I think that's a larger conversation, in regards to, figuring out methods, ways to, kind of navigate through some of those struggles.
Yeah.
Because we, those of us that are from there, that are here, we see it. And it's, like you said, the government has such a
grip.
Yeah, such a grip over it. And it's one of those things where I just marvel. I'm like, how in the world is that possible? You look at the natural resources, but then you look at the, GDP and all these different things, and it just doesn't make any sense. And it's one of those things where in my own mind, I can't even wrap my mind around it. I can't find a solution to it because it's such a big thing to try to tackle. But I don't even want to get into that conversation because it's just so much. But yeah, I mean, I think that's really, really, really interesting because you actually answered one of my questions that I was going to ask you about. Because just go with me. I'm getting somewhere. So have you ever seen God like rain money from the sky? Like, have you ever seen that?
Well, I just gave you my example a minute ago. He may not have rained it, but he wired it. So, I mean, I'm right there with you.
Okay, so right. But like, you've never like just seen money just falling just out of nowhere.
I can't say that I have.
Okay, I haven't seen it either. I'm not sure if Chase has, but he has a different background. So I don't know if he's maybe seen money. Probably not
that
right?
I recall.
Not that he recalls, right. To that point, it's we talk about God being a provider. And we have this image of him. I mean, maybe let me not speak we because I don't like when people say we. It's easy to have this image of him where money's like falling from the sky. There's like gold coming from everywhere. There's money. Whereas no, he's a provider and he does it relationally, right?
Yep.
He puts it on people's hearts who you haven't talked to in years, and all of a sudden they're calling you, like, okay, what is this, a pyramid scheme, or was going on here, right? And I love that you even touched on that. We can't allow this pride thing when it comes to finances a lot of times to stop God from using somebody to bless you. You know, 'cause I mean, I know that's something that I struggle with. You know, a lot of times, like, I'm not trying to ask nobody, you know, for nothing. You know, but it's like
nothing,
yeah,
man.
right? You know, but it's like
real.
money's not about to fall from the sky. It's wire transfer, or you know, you might get a letter from somebody, and it's just God uses those means to bless us. You know, to bless His people. And so when we do think about Him being, I don't really have a question. When we do think about Him being a provider, it's through it's relationally that He provides. You know, because if you're listening and, you know, you've seen God, you know, just rain money from the sky, let us know.
Please.
You know, I want to come wherever you are, you know, so we
Yeah,
can start
yeah.
a business there. But I don't know. I thought it was a really great
I don't know
point
if
that
you
you
need a
brought up.
business if you're seeing money come down from the sky.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You can pay off those student loans.
Oh yeah,
real
Ooh,
quick.
We need to do that. But I just love that point that it's relationally that God, you know, provides for and meets our needs. You know, how often in scriptures you talk about how the wealth that belongs to the wicked, you know, come into His people and things like that. You know, so
It's a beautiful wealth transfer. And it's not to disregard work ethic, right?
Not at all. Not at all.
So-
I'm talking about Him providing in
Absolutely.
those moments. Yeah.
It's in the midst of the impossible situation the Lord manifests who He is in itself. So if we just allow that and leave room for that, considering we're supposed to give Him the room, but instead we just leave some room for Him to move. If we give Him the room, all of a sudden those situations where we seem impossible is just areas that we haven't given Him the room completely.
Yeah.
And it just becomes essentially just mind blowing when really it shouldn't be mind blowing, right? We constantly say things like, "Whoa, that was incredible!" Like the Lord encouraged me through that, but it's somewhat of excuse like when I say this, but it's kind of like the Lord telling you also how spiritually mature you still are, right? Like when certain things that I tell my mentor and he's like not surprised, it's clearly because I'm still very spiritually mature to him. He's like, brother, like if you know his character, then you know that that's who he is, right? I'm like, I know, but he doesn't do it all the time. He's like, yeah, he does. Well, if he does not do it for me, it's like, and then you just keep coming up with examples to make the case for the fact that like this is a very amazing moment, but the most amazing moment already happened. Everything else, he already said it was going to happen, and he was going to continuously do through his Spirit. Yet we're like amazed and surprised when he actually says what he says he's going to do, right? And it just reveals how little we trust, how lack of intimately we are with him, and how spiritually mature we are. And then it just exposes an area of growth right then and there. In those areas where we're like, whoa, I didn't know that about you. It's like, well, that's because you're still essentially in that place with me, and you still need to grow into this area with me. Because there are areas that when I started walking with the Lord, I was amazed, and I'm no longer amazed. Not because I'm not amazed by him and I don't marvel at him, but because it's like my dad essentially feeding me. I'm not like, whoa, he got me a meal. Like, I'm not sitting there like, I'm not ungrateful, but it's like, it's my dad. Yeah. Like, of course he's going to get me a meal. Yeah. Right? I'm not surprised. I'm not amazed.
I mean, but that's to your point, like, nobody listening when your parents feed you, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're
Chick-fil-A
feeding me.
chicken nuggets?
You know, it's
you're
great.
Exactly.
Maybe you'll get excited for that. But
Yeah, but it's
still to your point, yes.
It's an expected.
But you're not surprised.
You're not surprised.
Exactly,
Yeah, like that's
But if your buddy shows up with chicken nuggets, you're like, whoa, I didn't expect that. But the Lord said he works through all his people, right? But you have an expectancy through your parents when he says he works through all your people, not through your parents or through your sister or through your brother, through those that you have leveled an expectation that God essentially has qualified to be his means of movement. When he really says, I move through everyone who says I do to me. Yet those people are essentially the means of supernatural activity. Your parents are more of a natural activity for him to move.
Yeah.
And it just exposes where you're at with him, you know?
Yeah, that's special, man. Really appreciate you sharing about the trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all of that, man. Because, you and I talked about it, probably 2 or 3 weekends ago now. And, yeah, man, like it's so encouraging to hear that and just a lot of the thoughts that you had and a lot of things that you received from the Lord are things that I've received in less clarity before. And so I'm really excited to kind of see like where things will be able to go with that. But
Yeah.
making the segue, because you did mention that the Uganda trip was with Go Overflow. And one of the things that we've mentioned on the podcast before, especially the last update that we talked about, is, the service opportunities that we have and those types of options for people to be able to participate in and serve in. And we mentioned Deep Love. And so it's something where, kind of for the audience to give y'all a little bit of context. So Deep Love is a partnership between Deep Love Ministries, Perspectives, and Go Overflow, who you went to Uganda with, as well as some other, I should also mention Freedom and Worship Church, obviously, and then some other peripheral organizations that come out every now and then. And so it's been a beautiful thing to watch, just kind of mature and grow. And it's so cool that I think Go Overflow is involved in that, and that they're balancing their work internationally with work domestically, because that's something that we also have in our heart to do. And so it's encouraging and inspiring to see that. But yeah, you are, what would your title be? Founder? Could we say that for Deep Love?
I mean, I would just say, I don't know
Chief
what
Ministry
I don't
Officer?
like titles, but I guess you can call me, I don't know what you can call me.
Visionary.
Whatever you want to.
One
I
of
think
the
we should let
co-founders.
Butterman Josue. He clearly
First
is
bishop
much.
of Deep Love.
Hey, I'm out of it.
See, that's exactly what I
Yeah.
meant right there. He
Yes.
wasn't even in the combo, and he
Yeah.
came out of nowhere with that
Had
massive.
to swing.
Bro,
Swiggy, what's up?
he's scheming in the back. Like whatever that meme is with the guy
Yeah,
rubbing his
that's
hands
me, yeah.
on the other side of the tree.
There you go. So there you go. That's the title.
There we go.
I'm gonna have to talk to my leadership team about that title. But
Yeah, we'll talk about
that
that.
submitted.
But yeah, since you're the first bishop, talk to us a little bit about the story, story of how it happened, and then heart behind it. all
Sure. So a few years back, all in context to how I came to Christ, through a apologetic perspective. For those of you that don't know what that is, it comes from a word called apologia in the Greek, which comes from scripture in 1 Peter 3:15 to be exact, which is essentially in reference to giving a defense for the hope within you, which is innately inside of me as an advocate and as an ambassador for Christ, to be able to articulate why I believe what I believe, right? I want to be able to know that when the world prosecutes my king, I can hopefully defend him, especially in a culture that is consistently attacking his character, his nature, and the claims that I knew truthfully he had made, from dying on a cross to rising from the dead 3 days later, etc. And so I want to be able to give an answer for that. And so that being said, because I came to Christ in that fashion, in a way where it was very, not intellectual, because people have really negatively put that into the context of church, but really I just don't disregard the mind. I engage my mind, and through that my heart is persuaded, and then follows what my mind is persuaded by. And when I saw the scriptures, and I saw clearly that he calls us to go to those that are truly in need, and it's not just essentially those that we think are in need in our close circle, friends, family, but it's even those that we don't want to go and talk to. It's those that we don't want to go and inconvenient our weekends with, from the guy that's sitting in a prison cell to the one that's living underneath a bridge to the woman that's prostituting herself in a different nation. People that I have no even spectrum or even reason to even think about. The Lord gives me a mind to think about those people. And then slowly, as I start meditating on his character, he starts to give me a heart, meaning a desire to want to essentially think for them and serve them more in whatever capacity then leads you to. And so I wanted to jump in the deepest part of the pool. And so, not because I wanted to check off a box, but I was like, look, if he says that in his word, then I'm going to obey him, even though I don't want to sit in a prison. I don't want to go to a prison. I don't want to go to a homeless shelter. I don't want to go into the streets. And so from prisons to street ministry to things that I really didn't go through a church, I just went into the streets with people that I thought had a heart for it. And quickly you will learn if you have a heart for it or not, or if God's still maturing you in that. A couple of friends of mine periodically a few years ago would just kind of say, well, we got nothing to do. And a friend of mine would call me up and she'd be like, hey, why don't we go out to the streets and give out some food and share the gospel? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So we get my van. We call it the Evangi van. I still like that name. It's not like Butterman Josue's names, but I think it's still a pretty cool name.
Out of
it sounds like it's out of Osmosis Jones.
It's like
or something like that.
Out of VeggieTales.
Yes.
Okay. Or that.
I'm all good. I'm all good with that. So
That's actually creative, though.
I like it.
Yeah.
So we call it that. We're about to wrap it, but we didn't wrap it. And we decided to go into the streets of Dallas, which a lot of people think it's Uptown and Highland Park, and it's not. There's areas in Deep Ellum. There's areas in South Dallas that are essentially written with poverty and written with darkness and need. And so we will go out there and bring protein bars and bottles of water and Bibles and we just minister to people, which whatever we had to essentially give, right? The Lord would meet those needs that hopefully we're there to meet, and we'd hopefully meet them with their eternal need, which is to know who Jesus Christ is. And many times those people knew who Jesus Christ was. They just wanted to be encouraged and reminded that the church actually still acknowledged them as also part of the body of Christ. And so we'd go out there and we were fully ready for them to minister to us, actually, because here we are, someone that had literally either had feces all over his clothes because he's been literally going to the bathroom in his clothes for days because he has no way to. He's disabled or a veteran and he's sitting on a wheelchair that he's gotten from some type of halfway house, and he's just sitting there. No one helps him up to go to the bathroom, etc. But he loves the Lord. He probably knows the scriptures better than most pastors do, because all he has is that book. His only hope is that book when he wakes up, when he goes to sleep. And many people aren't out there because they don't want to work. They genuinely cannot work. And circumstantially, their life has led them into a place where they end up on the street. Now, there are people, plenty of them, that are out there by choice. And so that being said, we do that. And eventually that girl that I used to go out there got engaged and got married and got busy, and nothing wrong with that. We all got busy, and we weren't going out as often, but I still go out with her once in a while, or we go out with the other group of friends, including Chase. And as we kept going out periodically.
Josue too.
Josue too.
Because he was out there serving.
He didn't want to ride in that Evangie van.
Well, he didn't do that, but I will say, first,
he had the Butterman Mobile, so
pretty much. But first, shout out to Brooklyn. We'll mention her by name, but
there you go.
But Josue and Brooklyn would serve a lot in Fort Worth back.
As a matter of fact, they actually started it. Originally, it was actually Butterman Josue and Brooklyn.
What
was
did y'all
Brooklyn
call
Landis?
Navigate.
Yes, and she actually told me about Navigate, and then eventually someone ended that, or it just paused. Life happened.
We're on a pause.
Or then
pause right now.
Yeah, and Brooklyn reached out to me, and I said, "Yeah, let's go do it." And then that became what we call Deep Love, Deep Ellum. And eventually, she had life, and things happened, and. Fortunately, I'm still single as a Pringle, so I still have the availability, even with the company and other things that I've got going on, that I still have some time available to do those things. So literally at the beginning of COVID, I get a call from a friend of mine, and his name is Mitch, actually, and he's part of a ministry that I'm also part of, and he says, "Hey man, so what are you gonna do? Because I know you do the prison thing, and I know you do some homeless stuff, and I don't know much about it, but my kids are in from college, and I need them to get out of the house. Like I get it, people are in their house, and if they want to stay in, but I need to get them out of the house." And I'm like, "Well, brother, the church is shutting down. I'm not shutting down. So I'm gonna go out and do something. So I may go out to the streets. I'm like, well, can we do it? Can we do that? And can I come with you?" And I said, "Sure." So we set up a day, and we went out on a Saturday. We took some clothes, we took some food. A church actually gifted us some Bibles so we could go out there. They didn't know what we were going to do with it, but they gifted us with that. And although his kids didn't like it, and nothing negative to them, it was their heart wasn't in it. He loved it, and he's an older guy. I mean, not old, but he's in his 50s. But he loved it. He was on his knees sorting through clothes, putting clothes on men, helping women. I mean, it was amazing. And I don't know, were you at the first one, Chase? Or did you come the second one?
To I guess briefly go in where
you came
where
periodically
we came in the picture.
to Deep Love, Deep Ellum.
Exactly.
So he periodically, but it wasn't until essentially we went out that first time.
So y'all went out in May, and I was down in Austin at the time, catching up with Grayson, and then saw y'all do that, and then pretty much right after seeing that, Lord put it on our heart to come alongside as perspectives and partner with y'all.
Gotcha.
And just
Okay,
allow
see,
for it just to just grow
I
into
should
what
know
God
this,
has
by
it.
the way.
No. But so
yes.
it was June of last year.
Okay, so you guys got the full scoop right there. So we did it once. We literally just set up a sheet. We put clothes on top of that sheet. It was a mound of clothes, a table, food, bottles of water, and about 6 or 8 of us started that. And to not go into a whole story, by the end of that year, we went from 5 friends with T-shirts and whatever we could scramble up from friends and family of donations from clothes and things that we could gather. It grew up to anywhere between 50 to 70 volunteers. We now had almost 12 tents. Each tent had a genuine purpose, from men's clothes to women's clothes to women's hygiene to men's hygiene to now we have chiropractic, we have hairdressers, we have a medic tent, which is where Go Overflow kicks in.
Job placement.
We got job placement. We have a way for people to write letters to their family members, because a lot of people in the streets don't have a way to communicate with family members. So we give them that ability. We have recovery programs for people with alcohol abuse or drug problems. And it wasn't us. Like, we didn't come up with any of this. I often say I just show up and things are just there. And that's not me being disregarding or false humility. It's just I really show up, and people that have hearts for things, either they're a chiropractor and they want to serve, but they don't know how to serve. All of a sudden, Deep Love, Deep Ellum became Deep Love DFW. And we zeroed in on Fort Worth because unfortunately, because of COVID, a lot of the county, Dallas County, was actually busing all the people in Deep Ellum to the Fort Worth, Lancaster area where the Presbyterian shelters are. And it was just masses of people just walking around the streets. And then at night, they'd bus themselves back to the Dallas shelters if they didn't fit into the Fort Worth ones. So we kind of zeroed in on that area just because of that. There was so much of a need, and we knew we could essentially minister to people in Dallas in Fort Worth. So we zeroed in on there, and next thing you know, by the end of that year, the ministry had grown. The purpose, the testimonies, the people that we were ministering to actually started to acknowledging us, because people out there want to know if you're genuinely there to just check off a box, or if you're there to actually minister to them consistently, right? And they're actually kind of having you on trial the whole time, because they're happy to take all the stuff you're here to bring them, but they're very, very walled off if you're going to actually try to minister to them until they know that you're genuinely there for them. And that only happens with trust, and that only happens with time. So as time went on, and as the months went by, people started to, oh, Deep Love is back. Oh, you guys are back. Hey, you guys are back. And next thing you know, it's like we don't have to ask them how's life. They immediately come up to us. And from Chase developing relationships with a young man like Cavante to Clarence to other people that actually have end up getting scholarships, and other people that have gotten jobs, to women that actually were working the streets, to now we've connected them to Lifeline, which is a ministry that helps women with transitional homes that are pregnant to get an apartment. I mean, what the Lord's done has been significant, to the point that we've partnered with a church, which Chase mentioned, called Freedom and Worship. They literally set up every single week a full church service in a 3-acre lot of land, and they serve that community. And a lot of the ushers, a lot of the people that greet, a lot of the people that serve the church, which is primarily anyone that's sitting on the streets, are people that live on the streets. It's people that have been essentially changed, their lives have been transformed, and now they feel and convicted that this is their church and they need to be rooted. So they get up from their tent, they wake up, or they roll themselves there in their wheelchair, and they're the greeter for every Sunday service. And then they wheel their way out of the church, the land, and they go back to their tent. And that in itself is something to just process too, right? We all, like, I don't want to go to church. You know, I worked late last night. I'm tired. I don't want to X, Y, and Z. We can all come up with excuses for why we don't want to go to service that weekend. Yet these people are the people that have to walk almost 4 miles. And that's not even comparatively to what people have to do in Africa or in other countries. But just zeroing in here locally and domestically, they're rolling themselves, veterans, people that have been blown to pieces because of war, and they're rolling themselves to this church service to serve the same people that they live next to that are either high, prostituting, selling drugs. And and they come as they are. You know, the question that often hits my head is, would these same people that come to this church be welcomed in every average church in DFW? Would they actually allow them in? You know, we could say, yeah, they would. I know the hearts of the church, but we don't know. We really don't know. You know, if enough complaints come into the church that person smells, or I have to sit next to someone that smells like legit urine, will they kick them out? Will they segregate them into a different room? Which we know biblically that's wrong.
Partiality.
Right? That's James 1. And it sinks deep. So really, deep love is a hub to allow people that have a gifting or a ministry that they think is not even a ministry, like chiropractic or hairdressing or vocational things that they have a gift to do for people, for a living, for work, for income, but they want to do more than just make a paycheck. And we provide them a place where they can serve these people on the streets with that same gifting, because people are in dire need of a haircut. They're in dire need of getting adjusted. They're in dire need of, for example, with Go Overflow, doctors that can't go internationally last year to missions, but they have a heart for missions. So now they're serving the people on the streets, and they're essentially providing we provide minor wound care and blood pressure tests and diabetes tests, and allow them to know what they need to ask for when they get to JPS, which is the local hospital nearby. You know, so all of that are in things that you get in a typical outreach in DFW, and it's transformed into that just because people just don't allow themselves to unite themselves in the body of Christ, right? I have the food, I have the Bible, so I'm going to start my own ministry. Instead of saying, you know what, I have the food, I have the waters, but this guy's got the chiropractic and this guy's got that. So let me work alongside and collaborate with him. And then all of a sudden now we have a segregated church, essentially not really serving anyone for that matter.
Yeah.
So that's really what Deep Love has become. And it's been a gift and a privilege among the many things God continues to trust me with even more so, and then trust me with the relationships like Chase and Perspectives, to have them sponsor us and have them come alongside us and work with us to serve this community.
Yeah, and I love seeing because obviously, you know, we love seeing all the pictures and videos of various people that go serve. People that I know that I don't even know if you know, that go and serve, you know, Deep Love and serve the community, just because they see the need and they see the vision. And, you know, it's such a crazy thing. I remember once we went to, with David in Dallas.
With West End Church.
West End Church.
Yeah.
And I remember standing there and I was like, Lord, I don't know how to serve these people, you know, in the sense of, because it talks about, you know, the Bible talks about the gospel being for the poor. And I'm like, I get that. You know, I get that. But I'm like, but if someone is in this state, right, like we bring the gospel to them, not being like cynical or anything, but I'm like, is that really like, is that something that's going to change their life? You know? And I'm kind of just thinking through this, and I remember the Lord just had me just go talk to one of the guys, or go try to talk to this guy, and I just sat next to him, try to talk to him, and he didn't really want to talk to me. And then eventually he opens up, and we start talking, and I end up overhearing this other conversation, and I start talking to these guys, and we start praying, and like you said, I went there and I left more encouraged than I felt like than I did anything for them. You know, they were like, young man, you know, we just thank you for praying with us and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you guys encouraged me more. Like, I felt like you guys deposited more, you know, into me than I probably did anything for you guys, you know. And I bring that up because it's, you know, it's easy to you know, to look at, like, man, what can I do for these people? You know, it's like, it's such a hard thing to try to wrap our minds around. You know, like myself, I can't do anything for these people. But yet you go out there and you serve, and then you see what God does in you through those same people. And then you hear testimonies of how God is opening ways and doing a lot of different things. And it's one of those things, like you said earlier, it's like, man, I need to trust God more. You know, I need to grow more in my maturity and knowing the heart of my Father and in all of these various ways. You know, so I just wanted to, this is one of those like public.
He's confessing, guys.
Confessing, no. It's one of those public.
Those are only for Fridays.
Yeah, Confession Fridays, episode Friday. So this is one of those public things where it's like, for the ministry and what it's doing, and just knowing that there's a lot of fruit that's coming from that, and even just hearing some of the stories and testimonies. I didn't even know you were that young. I thought you were older than that. But that's a story for another day. But yeah, I mean,
he can take that as he may.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just seeing how well you've been stewarding, just showing up, since that's all you've been doing.
Amen.
You've been stewarding that well, and the Lord has continued to provide and make ways for such an awesome ministry. And I guess this is just a short message. I know people have been probably blowing you up, and you got things to do. So I was on Twitter once, and I saw a video of these people. If you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. These people, they were in, I think I want to say in Brazil. They were trying to help the people, the local, tribes people, and but the way the media, the coverage of that story was that they were forcing people to believe God, and then they would take care of their needs, and so the outside world, without understanding, that's their perspective of what we do.
Yeah,
I'm gonna feed you. I'm gonna force you to believe, and then I'm gonna feed you. So could you kind of speak to that a little bit? Because I know I remember watching that video, and I'm like, man, this is really interesting. Because a lot of people that are responding were like, oh, this is what Christians do.
That manipulation.
Yeah. So if you could just touch on that shortly.
That's actually more closer to me than you realize, because I don't need a video. Actually, every time I post a picture, my mom gets a phone call, because my mom's sister calls her and tells her, your son is forcing people to believe his belief system and then manipulating them with food in a place of states. It's exactly what you're saying, but I'm not charged of it by random people. I'm actually charged by it by my own family. Not immediate, but extended family. And unfortunately, I don't have a fear. I should say this actually the other way around. Fortunately, I don't have a fear of man. So because of that, I could care less what people have to say about me. And I could care less what people have to say about the heart of the ministry, because I genuinely just need to understand that my heart is in alignment with his. And when I say his, I mean is the Lord. And I need to know that the people that are out there serving with me are also there positioned and postured in the same fashion too. Outside of that, I know I'm going to be held accountable for the intentions, and the fruit of those intentions are actions. So my conscience needs to be clean before the Lord, not before man. So I'm going to answer it in that angle. And then the second angle, to the people that obviously we're trying to witness to and reach, and they're essentially seeing us as essentially Ponzi schemers or manipulators out in the world, dangling the carrot in exchange for hope or mercy. I always say this, look, for me to go out of my way to go and ask people to give me clothes, to sort through clothes, to then have to go to grocery stores, pack my van with food that is not for me, then fill up my whole house, fill up volunteers' house, inconvenience everyone that volunteers in my life, to essentially go then in the Sunday, which is our weekend, to then set up, rain, shine, thunderstorm or not, this outreach, because we've given our word that we're going to be there, to then set up this entire thing from medic to food to clothing, to then do all of that just so people would be manipulated to believe what I believe, I think is a lot of effort for someone that's selfishly minded. I think if someone's that selfish, which the whole purpose of their claim to us is that you're essentially just trying to manipulate people into your belief system. I think there's a whole lot better and more efficient ways than me having to go an entire month by collecting food, conveniencing my house, having to pay for storage units, having to buy a trailer, then ask people to essentially help us, go through all of that just so I can give stuff away in exchange for someone to make a decision.
And a footnote, doing that for free.
Yeah, no one's getting paid. I mean, to me, that's a fascinating thing. I would tell that same skeptical person, I'm like, would you do that for what you believe? Because they believe something. Regardless if you're an atheist, you believe you're an atheist. You believe that that's the truth, that there is no God. So would you go out of your way to persuade someone that there is no God by giving them food? Would you go to that same community? Would you maybe respond, well, I'm not a manipulator? Okay, that's perfectly fine. Well, then my question to you is, will you equally go and serve those people and not tell them that atheism is the right way? Just serve them. Because I haven't seen a lot of atheists go out there and feed the homeless. I haven't seen a lot of agnostic people go out there and essentially hug people and encourage people and go underneath bridges where it smells like absolute hell and essentially tell people you are worth something, you are valuable. Regardless if you believe in the God that I believe in, I'm going to tell you what he believes about you. I just haven't witnessed it, and I'm out there every month. Now I do have people that believe in Hinduism and Muslims, and they have their own way of essentially evangelizing. But they're not bringing food, and they're not bringing a lot of things. So the one thing that I will say, and to wrap up my answer, is that the thing that fascinated me about this guy named Yeshua when I was trying to debunk Christianity and Islam and all these other religions is that Jesus Christ is the only, and Christianity is the only religion, if you want to quote it a religion, that actually models and says, do as I did, not do as I say. Right? Jesus modeled it. Every other God essentially gives you a doctrine to follow. Jesus says to follow me, not to follow what I've said. Essentially, he modeled it before me. He's the only non-hypocrite out of the bunch. So that would be my answer to that. Hopefully it answers it.
I mean, that's a beautiful answer because I remember reading through the comments. I was like, wow, that's a really interesting perspective that the people that were commenting, took to. Not saying that some people have not done that.
Oh, I'm sure there are.
Which we all,
I have examples of people that have done that.
People that have done that. But like you said, it's good knowing that one day we will, stand before the Lord, and everything is always tested by fire.
Yes, it is.
Whether people want to say X, Y, or Z, what does that got to do with you, right? We want to do what the Lord has commanded us, placed on our hearts. So that was a beautiful answer. As you guys can tell, he is very passionate. So that was a great answer.
If I lack passion, y'all should pray for me because there's something wrong here.
Let them know.
Yeah, amen
Absolutely.
to that. Yeah, we can go ahead and wrap up here. Because we'll have you on again here in about a month or so.
Sorry, guys.
Y'all gotta deal
At
with
least
them
now
again.
y'all know who you don't need to listen to. Yeah. I see the name pop up.
But yeah, we'll have you on again because you hinted at it. But you mentioned Best Bodies for Life, your company, your business, and was able to give a little bit of context around your partnership with Go Overflow and the child sponsorships. And so we'll bring you on again here within the next month or so. Be able to have video be there.
Yes.
And you'll be able to share a little bit of that journey, and just kind of like your thoughts on like kingdom entrepreneurship and that, because we've been talking about that a lot, and we think it'll be really valuable to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean that's going to be probably another at least hour and a half conversation. So
Don't tell them that.
it'll be good. No. They'll see the timer there and they'll be like, okay, I get it.
Better get ready for this one.
But any last things you want to share, man?
No, if you guys, Deep Love Ministries, nowhere does it state you have to be a Christian to come out and serve. So for those skepticals or those people that are listening that says they're out there manipulating people, you are welcome to come and watch us not manipulate. You are welcome to come witness and see how we essentially go out there and the people that go out there. You are welcome to come and see how the chiropractor is not charging or not asking people to believe something before he adjusts them. You are welcome. So I welcome you. And then I also welcome those that are hearing and are encouraged by it and want to come and check it out. We are out in the Lancaster area. You can find it on Facebook. It's actually under Deep Love Outreach. The website's also called deeploveministries.org. We post the events. It's every third Sunday of every month. Last one just literally passed 2 weeks ago, a little bit over a week ago now. The next one will be in September. We haven't stopped since May of literally 2020, and I don't plan on it. So you are welcomed. Bodies, meaning hands and feet, is what we usually are in need of the most, because it's people that actually have gone out that have allowed us and enabled us to grow. And when I say grow, it's not financially; it's grown into the sense of being able to offer more of what the community tells us they need.
Impact.
And I welcome you. I ask you to come out. We also have an Instagram. Don't really rely much on that because we're not very active in it. But it's, again, Deep Love Ministries or Deep Love Outreach. I can't even recall what the Instagram is, but
we'll put it in the description.
Yeah, y'all will find it. And hopefully I'll find you, and hopefully you guys will be encouraged by coming out there.
Yeah, we had Raul's a very interesting guy. He's a serious guy.
An interesting word.
Yeah, it is, right? He's a serious guy. He's a passionate guy. He's a guy that likes to laugh, and just a blend of all these different things. And he's also a dancer. Don't let him fool you guys. I've seen it with my own eyes. He is a great dancer. Yeah, he's a great dancer as well.
Watch out at Billy Bob's on Thursday nights.
Yeah, watch out, because he's a man with the moves. But man, no, it's I just knew I had to get ready for this conversation, because I'm like, every time he comes on, he always brings it. And the examples that you were sharing, you're one of the best storytellers I feel like we've had on the podcast, because your examples are just so detailed and thorough, and it's like, wow, that's really, really good. So, thank you for being how many times has it been? Like 5+, I would say?
Probably around 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Special.
Well, quo on those that are listening or tuning in for Kingdom Business or wanting to know more about that. This isn't my gift. This is the Lord's gift anointed in me, and it's not me. I'm really highlighting him. Is if you want to be in a company that's kingdom minded, you got to know how to essentially tell a story. And if you know how to essentially tell your story, then you'll be able to tell a story to anyone about anything that you're passionate about. And a company always starts with the story. Why did you start it? Why are you passionate about it? And then it leads into the what. Your product absolutely has no value if there's no reason and passion behind it. And I'm not saying that there aren't products and services out there that obviously solve lots of problems, but they usually have a lifetime. Yet those businesses that go on from generations is usually because there was an innate vision. There was an innate vision, mission, and passion that was fueling them three together to essentially keep it going even through the storms when they go. Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to hit a storm in business.
No. Well, that's a good teaser right there.
It's a very great teaser.
Yeah.
We told you guys we were getting you guys, we had to reach really far for our brother here. We did just that.
Exactly. But yeah, y'all, that'll be a wrap for us today. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. All the info for Raul and Best Bodies for Life and Deep Love will be in the description below if you want to go check them out, support them, all that fun stuff. And then all of our information will be in the description below as well if you want to support us, the outreaches, the podcast, all that fun stuff. If you liked today's episode, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give a rating on Apple Podcasts, all that fun stuff. Raul, thanks again for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so until next time, much love. God bless.